There's a very familiar verse in Matthew chapter number 9. It's in verse number, let me read verse 37 and 38, where it says, Then saith he unto his disciples, The harvest truly is plenteous, but the laborers are few. Pray ye therefore the Lord of the harvest that he will send forth laborers into his harvest. And so the teaching of Jesus in those verses is very simple and it's very clear. God's people have the responsibility to pray that he will send more missionaries to take the gospel to the regions beyond. And so as we travel about in missions, we hear a lot of emphasis and encouragement for Christians to pray to the Lord to send missionaries to the field. And we certainly need to do that. I don't want to be interpreted as suggesting that we don't need to do that, because we do. But there's something that we sort of miss, and it's that there are many missionaries who they're called, they go to candidate school, they start raising support, maybe they get to the field, they spend a term, and somewhere along the way, many of them become casualties. The technical term is attrit. They become an attrit. They become part of the attrition rate. And so missionaries go, missionaries come, we pray, we say, pray that the Lord will send more missionaries. And certainly we need to obey the Lord and pray that he'll send more missionaries. However, when I think about that, it makes me think of what I call the donut story. So let's say we started a donut shop. And in our donut shop, we advertise that our donuts have a 6-hour shelf life. Then we find ourselves throwing 50, 60, whatever percent of our donuts in the trash after only 2 hours. 2 hours short of the guaranteed shelf life. And so if we gathered the baker, we gathered the salespeople, we gather everybody around and we say, you know, we're baking a lot of donuts. They're supposed to last for 6 hours. They're only lasting for 2. We're throwing a lot of donuts in the trash. Think about it. The idea, throwing donuts in the trash. Sometimes they ask me, Chris, what's your favorite kind of donut? Well, the answer to that's very simple. It's whatever donut you're serving is my favorite at the time. Anyway, the group discusses and says, I know the answer. We need to bake more donuts. Now just think about that. Will we end up with more donuts in the case? Yes, we will. Will we end up with more donuts in the trash? Yes, we will. No intelligent business person, no thinking-minded person would say the answer to the donut problem is just bake more donuts. They would say, stop. We need to step back. Something's wrong. Well, the same thing might be true in what we'll just call the missionary enterprise for sake of discussion. Again, you know, in our circles, we love to attack people who say things that a little tiny bit of what they say is not quite accurate. I don't want to be interpreted as suggesting we do not need to pray for more missionaries to go, because we do. However, it might be good for us to stop and ask ourselves, why is it that so many of those who feel called to the mission field never get there? They go through candidate school, they start deputation, they don't get to the field. They get to the field, they don't last a whole year. They don't last a whole term. If they last a whole term, they don't go back after their first term. The problem is we don't share those statistics because nobody wants to hear the downside of the story. In our donut shop, we would talk about how we increased our sales of donuts. We would never advertise, well, we had to throw more donuts away to do that. And so we need to step back and take a look and ask ourselves, what can we do to help missionaries get to the field as prepared as possible, while they're on the mission field to be as effective as possible, and to stay on the mission field as long as possible. Where I live, if I dialed 911 and the 911 operator answered and said, what's your emergency? If I said, well, there was a shooting next door. Well, in just a minute where we live, minute, 2 at the most, there'll be a deputy knock on our door. He'd say, did you dial 911? And I'd say, yes. And inside that deputy, he or she, they're not going to say this. You may catch it in their face. Inside, they're thinking, yes, I live for this. Pretty soon there'll be 2 deputies, 3, 5, 10, an ambulance, an incident commander, a helicopter, the news media, of course, a fire truck.
They live for someone to dial 911. It's really hard to explain. Back in my volunteer junior fireman days, we hung around at the firehouse waiting for somebody to have an unfortunate event. People would say, that's strange. You got your excitement out of other people's misfortune. Well, you could say it that way, but we viewed it as we live to help other people with their problems. You know, it seems like a simple question. Who does a missionary think is living to answer their call if they dial 911? And if you get down to the heart of hearts of many missionaries, they don't know who to call. Not that who's sitting there saying, yes, I'm glad that you called. We were at a pastor's fellowship, and I said to the group, who does a missionary call if they need to dial 911? And I heard a voice, a pastor, say, not me. And then the same voice, or one near him, spoke up and said, and look, if they call, you guys better answer. It's not that we're so special. It's that God has called us to a ministry of caring for missionaries. And so think about the donut story. We're going to just make more donuts so we can increase our recruiting numbers, our sales numbers, and at the same time throw more donuts in the trash. So we certainly don't want to speak negatively of recruiting missionaries, but we need to do something proactively about the attrition rate besides talking about it. Well, spend some time thinking about the donut story today.